Council, today is Wednesday, September 5th, 2026. It is 6:02 p.m., and I will call this special meeting of the Barre City Council to order. The first item on the agenda is the adjustments to and approval of the agenda. Any changes, Mr. Manager?
Just a clarification, Mayor, because it was in the packet, that I did email the council about item 4F on the consent agenda, authorizing the manager to execute contracts, and I'm requesting your approval of the Prospect Heights redesign contract for $292,410.66 to VHB. This was competitively bid. It was scored by a panel of 3 reviewers, and we received two proposals, and we are selecting the one that scored highest both technically and on the cost perspective, and this would be funded from the state grant award for Prospect Heights.
Thank you very much. And Council, I did ask the manager to send all of those documents to Council so that I figured the review was important, the thoroughness of the review, not that I was questioning the results of the staff reviewers, but I thought it was important for the Council to have all of the information so we could see what they saw. So we did that, and we'll make that part of the minutes as well. Any other changes to the agenda, Council? Then a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. And seconded? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. And in the minute that we did that, I realized that at the end of the meeting, I'm just going to give the Council a quick briefing in terms of where we stand on our SNAP program here in the city. So I will do that at the end of the meeting. So Council will move on to item 4A on the agenda, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. We'll be approving the minutes of the meeting of 10/28/25. Do you have any licenses and permits under that section? There are none. We'll be authorizing the $15,000 allocation for the Adopt a Storm Drain program. We will be appointing Fred Pond as the Barre City representative to the Regional Bike Share Pilot Program Steering Committee. We'll be approving a retroactive $5,000 allocation or prospective $5,000 allocation from the Bruce Trust to support the SNAP benefits for the children of Barre, and we'll be authorizing the manager to execute contracts as needed. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. One other really important point on the contract for Prospect Heights is, this was in my email to you, but it's also important for the minutes that your authorization to me, I'm requesting it to be contingent upon receipt of a CDBG-DR award.
Yes.
So we would notify VHB that they've been selected as the winner of the RFP, but we would not execute that contract absent receipt of the CDBG-DR application that we made this fall. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Any objection from the mover and seconder? No. Okay, then we'll work that in there. Just briefly, Council, a couple of things. I mean, I did the math on authorizing, because all decisions with me are always math-based. So I looked at the $15,000 authorization for the Adopt a Storm Drain program, and a constituent had stopped me and said, well, that's kind of a cute program. And so I did the math on it. If we consider the $15,000 and we consider $30 an hour for labor, which is pretty conservative, if you add in employee benefits, FICA, I think our average DPW contract rate is probably much higher than that. 15,000 would buy you 500 hours. So then I texted Nicholas and I said, how many storm structures are there in the city? And he said, there's 1,000. So if it took 20 minutes for a staff person, a DPW person, and believe me, we've got more important work for them to do, but if we had them clearing a storm drains and it took them 20 minutes per drain, that would be 333 staff hours. So it kind of compares favorably with the 500. However, in the out years, this program is only $1,000. So if we had to pay our staff to clear storm drains, we could maybe clear 100 storm drains. So this is a really cost-effective program. If people get behind it, I don't expect well, maybe we'll get every storm drain in the city adopted, but, you know, if we even got half of them adopted and citizens were out there helping out with some of the light lifting, it would be a huge time saving for DPW. So just wanted to say, she's not here yet, but I just want to say thank you again to Councilor Guston for presenting this program, because it's going to be a really cost-effective program for the city. In terms of the Brewster Trust money, as I'll tell you later on, we're going to keep that powder dry right now. We've managed to raise some funds through the program. Every single day, I'm talking to our food shelves. Like I said, I'll outline it more thoroughly later. But at this point, I don't anticipate this SNAP thing changes daily. It just does. At this point in time, knowing that our original goal was to fill that 1 week gap when SNAP recipients literally were getting nothing, we think we're okay. And that comes directly from those operating the food shelves, you know, the food bank, you know, Dan Malin, folks at the churches, that's directly from them. And, you know, I'm checking in every afternoon. So with that, council, motion to approve the consent agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a
Yes, of course.
few questions. First, just about the VHB proposal, can you just remind me, this is, I know you just said that it would be contingent on us receiving the CBDG DR grant money.
There you go.
This is all just permitting? That's what this is? This is the
Yeah,
like
it's
first phase kind of thing?
Yeah, it's basically redesigning it because it's an old subdivision, modernizing it to current standards. It's that part of the work.
And does this have any, like if we pay this, does it give us more information like, okay, you're not going to be able to do this many units, or you could do this many units? Does it tell us any
It'll
better?
fine tune it. The due diligence really gave us a really accurate snapshot of it, which already sort of constricted it a little bit.
Yep.
So it might fine tune it a little bit more as they get more into the field, but I wouldn't expect a wild swing from
Okay.
what we learned from the due diligence.
Okay,
Now, we don't anticipate, Counselor, that's going to change, but we'll be able to we'll have bid-ready documents.
Correct.
And we don't have that now. We have a level of detail that leads us to believe, you know, X number of units. And that could change by 5%. It could change by, you know, 5 or 10. We don't anticipate that, but it could. But the most important part of what this will provide us with is documents that we can go to a contractor with and say, here, how much will this cost? We want to bid this. But good question.
my other question, I wanted to make a note that I had sent some very minor edits to the clerk about the minutes, just a couple of very minor things, just for her to update. I can run through them, but there's no substantive changes to the minutes. And then my other question is actually regarding the contract for the adopt a drain. And I know Amanda's not here. On page 18, it talks about the site license for annual membership. And it talks about year one in multiple years. Is it really like year one, year two, year three? Because it talks about year one every time, but it doesn't, is this for the full 3 years?
This cost is the 15,000 is for the full 3 years. Yes,
Okay. And that's what this is showing?
that's what this is showing. Yes.
So if you look at the annual fees, there's site license, annual membership year one, and it says 639.10, and then it says site license, two rows down. Site license, annual membership year one, 639.10, and then 2 down, it says the same exact thing. So,
I believe this is year 1, year 2, and year 3 of that. Yeah.
okay. And then my last question, which really would be an Amanda question. I love the idea of the K-12 program materials, but I'm wondering, have we contacted the school district or a school district to see if they would be used? Like, how are we just gonna be like, here? And then, before we spend the money, it would be great to know that they're going to be used. that they could be fit into some curriculum.
Yeah, I don't know the extent that, that Counselor Dustin has spoken to the school district about it. So we can certainly hold on that piece if the council would like. I don't know, I can't speak with authority about how much she's engaged with them on that piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic, but I don't want to give them something if they're like, what are we going to do with this?
Right.
'Cause then it would really be, money that we've spent that may just sit.
So, there's no objection from the mover and the seconder. When Counselor Guston arrives, we'll get a satisfactory answer to that question. We'll consider it approved. In the meanwhile, council can always pull it back.
Okay, I'm fine
Sound
with
like a
that.
plan?
Yep.
Okay, then we'll do that. Any other discussion or changes, council? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, consent agenda is approved. Council will move on to 4A, and we'll be approving the city warrants for the week of 11/5/25. A motion would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Got to say the words. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, are you abstaining?
I'm
Okay,
abstaining.
we still have 4 affirmative votes, so the motion carries. You good?
Yes, I am good. My report is basically on the election. It went very well, I thought. 1,208 ballots for the bond votes for Barre City. Both items or articles did pass. DPW was a higher margin than the TIF fund. Everything went very well. The CVCC ballots are still awaiting the commingling, which will happen tomorrow at Alumni Hall. And basically what that is the 4 tabulators that were used during yesterday's election. It's Waterbury, Montpelier, Barrytown, Barre City. We all congregate at Alumni Hall, and then all the other communities bring their hand-counted ballots to be fed through our tabulators for the final results of the day.
And do you compare, like, they've hand counted
They have hand-counted their
ballots.
communities, yes.
Do you like add them and make sure there's no major discrepancy? In other words, if you have hand-counted ballots, you have machine-counted ballots.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take those totals, add them up, and then feed everything, take that total and see how it compares?
What we do is we invite 2 communities at a time, so each community will have 2 tabulators.
I
We
see.
already see the numbers on those tabulators, so when they feed theirs through, they have to match what they have hand-counted
Mm-hmm.
to what we already have in there.
What if they don't?
Then they are responsible for recounting theirs
I see. Okay.
at the time.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but also the ballots are pulled out after each.
after
So
every
you would be able
town.
to pull the ballots out and then recheck. I've done this with Carol before.
Yes, after every town,
Yep.
they're pulled back out because they are
Yep.
going to bring them back to their community.
Yep,
to
so there's
store.
no way for them to be
They're not
misinterpreted.
blended. No,
Yep.
they're not blended.
nice and secure.
Yeah, so you count them, and as far as announcing
That's-
the results,
that's-
that is the responsibility of school.
School, yes.
Okay, yeah, just want to be clear.
Jody Emerson usually comes around half an hour before everything's done, just.
Just want to be clear on that.
Yes.
Any other questions for the city clerk? You ran a great election, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
And thank you to the voters for the result.
Absolutely.
Like I said, we won't let you down. We got it up, we'll keep it up.
Got one up.
Yes, Vern Rhodes.
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks, especially Cheryl, for the great sign that you put up at the top of the steps that said, "Vote here." And thank you.
Well, I'm glad it was helpful.
Okay, are you settled, Counselor Guston? Counselor Spalding had a question, if you're settled.
I am settled.
She had a question on the Adopt a Storm Drain contract.
So
Dr.
my,
Spalding?
my question is about the K-12 program materials. Have you had a conversation with the schools to make sure that they can use them or will use them?
Not yet, and I just want to be clear that what was presented is not the contract yet. What that is the invoice to detail the costs of what the potential services would be. So before there is an official signing and everything like that, I think you're right, that should be the conversation is, are 10 enough? Is 10 how much you want to do? Should it be 5?
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
that's the right next step.
So obviously, we've authorized the $15,000 allocation. We did that. And you'll come back to the council with a contract? Or- Yeah,
Potentially.
well, we usually do, even if, merely as a courtesy to say
Certainly.
to the council, hey, here's the contract. I'm going to sign it, or Nicholas is going to sign it
Certainly.
in 3 days unless somebody has an objection.
Yep, I had held off reaching
Yeah,
back
cool.
out to them until we approved the funding tonight, but now that I will bring that conversation up, I'll bring the manager in and we will see what they need from there and what's the next
Perfect.
steps.
And give us, 48 hours to review and we're good.
Yeah, and then, so just to clarify, if it isn't a contract, if it's just then they invoice us and we pay for it, do you still want to see the next step?
Well, I think your question went to the school materials, and what if we don't want those? What if we don't need those? What if the school says,
Sure.
we'll go another direction, we'll provide our own materials? Then obviously, I think to Councilor Spalding's point, we don't want them in
We
a
don't wanna
contract.
spend
Yeah,
much
we
time,
don't
yeah.
want them in an invoice if we
Yeah.
don't think we're going to be using them. You've been all over this thing. As far as I'm concerned, I'm out.
Right, no, I think there are a couple of interim steps we can take to make sure that every kit we paid for is both wanted and needed, and I will follow up with them as to the best logistical next steps from their end about billing versus contract versus all of those pieces, and I will follow up with Counselor Spalding directly and bring it back to the council if there is a sort of contract next step instead of an invoice payment next step. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
no, I'm fine with that. Is that all right, Councilor?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure we're not.
No, it's a totally fair question. We started with 10 because that seemed like a good number, but we can change it depending on need.
And Bern, did you have a question? Or was your hand just still up?
Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, no worries, no problems. And council, did I call for comments under visitors and communications, or did I blow past that? Usually I come here really early. I was over at, the good Sam had a briefing over at the library, and so I'm usually here, I try to be here about 20, 25 minutes early, so I have a chance to settle myself and go through all the materials a fourth time, and I didn't do that, so I felt a little rushed. I apologize. Is there anyone under visitors and communications wishing to address the council regarding an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, saying no one, no harm, no foul, but excuse me anyway. So, council, anything under liquor control and cannabis? And Mr. Manager, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to echo the bond vote results from last night. I just want to thank all the residents who came out to vote. Obviously, very pleased with the outcomes. And sort of echoing what the mayor said, we certainly don't take for granted the responsibility that voters entrust with us every time they take these votes, and our responsibility to be wise investors of public resources. And at the same token, we're really, these were really good projects for Barre City. They are good projects for Barre City. We're really looking forward to keeping both of them moving and breaking ground. I haven't got to use those ceremonial golden shovels downstairs, so we're looking forward to getting those out next year on these two sites. And then I also want to acknowledge Carol, both as in her role as treasurer and TIF administrator, who really makes sure that what we do with all these bonds are really complex in terms of the legal steps. You have to advertise in the paper so many days, so many times, so many weeks before. And it's really, really good to be able to turn something over to her like that and know that she's got it taken care of and that we don't have to worry about legal challenges. So, and besides doing a great job on a lot of the education materials for the bond, she also made sure that legally we were on really solid ground. So she continues to be a terrific resource for that. The second update I have for you, Council, is on FEMA buyouts. We had a little lull there in closings, but we have 3 more scheduled. And the next 2 are on November 21st, and that's for 5 Scampini, 7 Harrington. And then a third is scheduled on December 8th. for 27 River Street. So once those, including those three, once they are closed, we will have 12 of 27 approved buyouts, FEMA buyouts totally done and completed, closed. We have 3 that have yet to be approved by FEMA, and those approved by the city but not approved by FEMA. Those were a little bit later in the game, so it makes sense that they're at that point. Hard to say what the shutdown impact of it is or isn't, but there's 3 that are still sort of pending out there. And then of the ones that haven't closed and haven't been approved by FEMA, the remainder are still in progress. The commercial ones are in environmental review, and the others are just continuing to go through. So still making good progress on these. These are, bittersweet moments. They're, tough to meet the families that went through this, but they're also very happy to have the closure that comes with it. And then finally, just real quick, that the facilities and rec departments have been very busy up on the Hill. The ice season, as I've mentioned before, it's our busiest season up there of all our facilities. And so just want to remind, the fans of the BOR that keep an eye out for stick and puck schedules and additional open skate schedules coming out. We're trying to make sure that the ice gets as much use as possible, and including for people who might, maybe elderly folks, retired folks or maybe people who work from home. If you like to do open skate during the day when there's not as many people, we're opening the BOR 11 to 2 Tuesdays and Thursdays for people who just want to come and skate around and do laps without the crowds. And those will be free skates for people to do that. So keep an eye on those things. We're trying to make sure, inviting people into our facilities as much as we can. So that's all for me.
Thank you. Questions, folks? Yes.
I have one. On the buyouts, I
Yeah.
noticed that there are quite a few demolition permits in the permit list that we received as part of the packet. Have we started scheduling demolition or planning that?
We have broad timelines of middle to late to end of this month. So those are, we don't have specific dates yet, but we have those general parameters. And so, yes, they're moving, and they're working in sequence with, the ones that were approved first are going to be on the demo list first. So we should start to see some of them, hopefully by the end of this month, being completed.
And a sort of follow-up question on how the site is left after demolition. This is not an area of previous knowledge for me. Do they also pull out the foundation and then fill in the cellar hole?
Yes, yeah, they leave us basically a green site. They'll leave in this, as I understand it from looking at the grant agreements, they'll do the landscaping associated with it. So, or at least plant seed. I don't know if they'll do much more than that, but that's sufficient, I guess. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, I get where you're going here. I followed the whole blow up the trestle. Do I get the fire truck? You want to know specifically when the demolition is, don't you?
No,
When you
I was
schedule those,
actually-
would you mind just shooting an email to the entire council? I would appreciate that.
demolition of houses bumps me.
No, I know where you were embarrassed to ask. I saw
What I
where
was
you were
actually,
going.
what I was actually worried about a little bit was if they were going to leave us cellar holes ahead of winter.
No, they don't.
So-
The demolition contracts calls for, they call it site at grade, which means everything's gone. It's a graded, well, it's not going to be green this time of year, so to Nicholas's point, they probably wouldn't hydro seed it now, but they'll probably come back in the spring and have to hydro seed it. Awesome, but I saw where you're going, it's okay. We'll get you noticed, not a problem. Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, council, we'll move on to 8A under new business. So this is the flood resiliency plan, strategic riverbed maintenance. Councilor Guston.
Thank you very much. So, Roy, if you could come on up. I am extremely happy to welcome Roy Schiff from SLR Consulting, who we've seen many times before here in City Council. Roy and I had talked last summer at Middlesex, and he said, I'm thinking about putting a presentation together about dredging. And I said, as soon as you've got it ready, we will be interested in it. So as you all know, strategic riverbed maintenance, exploring it, understanding it, and fully understanding the opportunities that we have for implementation here in Barre City, where it might help our flooding prospects and where it might make them worse. is part of the flood resiliency plan, because this has been something I know I've heard in a lot of public forums and in talking to a lot of residents about improving our flooding outlook here in Barre City. So I am thrilled to have an expert here to tell us more about what kinds of work we do on that, what kinds of work makes sense to do on that, and to answer questions that folks have. So all yours, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Well,
great.
we can hear you
It
fine.
goes to the
That's
internet.
actually for the recording.
Okay, great. All
Yeah,
right.
so you're good.
All right, well, thanks for having me. Great to be back again. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about dredging, riverbed maintenance, and like you, Counselor, we get this a lot in all our flood mitigation work. A lot of people are tuned into dredging. And I think the main reason is the state sort of changed its policy on dredging. We used to, as a state, do a lot of riverbed sediment removal, reuse of gravel, and we don't do as much, but I will say there are spots around the state right now that are actively managing for sediment. So I'll give you a couple examples as I go through this. And I think we said I have about 10 minutes, and then we'll entertain questions. Okay.
Yeah, we'll go.
All right, so some key points, and I'll show some graphics to follow up. Flood storage, if you look at a river in cross-section, flood storage is mostly out on the floodplain. So if you took every foot of water when a flood comes through the river, some of that water is in the channel where you would dredge and make that deeper, but most of it is actually out on the floodplain. So especially the floods we've seen in the last few years, a lot of that storage is out on the floodplain. The main reason the state stopped dredging widespread is that it creates unstable channels. So if you have a natural river and you dig it down 4-6 feet, those banks get tall, and then when the next flood comes, they get really unstable. When a flood comes down a river, rivers move sediment, wood, water, and in our region, ice. When a big flood comes, as we've all seen recently, unfortunately, a lot of sediment comes with that water. So if you dig a big hole in a river around a bridge, around a stormwater outfall, it typically fills in as that water comes down the river, and then you kind of lose some of that storage. So if you have to dredge, you're doing it ongoing, and I'll talk about this a little further in some of the examples. And then finally, local sediment and debris removal at infrastructure are common parts of flood recovery and are costs, and you can get permits to do that. And just like the Berlin Street Bridge, there's an outfall there. It's a location that's prone to aggradation, and if you don't get the sediment out of there, that storm drain's going to back up, and you're going to have issues. So I know the city's been actively removing sediment from there as well. So next slide, please. So let's dig into it a little deeper. Here's a cross section my mentor Jim made this years ago, and it shows sort of a common dimension of a floodplain. This could be an active channel, this could be Gunners Brook or Stevens Branch or Winooski River, and then you see these floodplains next to it, and they tend to be a lot wider. Next slide. There's a lot of stuff on this slide. You don't need to look at the data and all, but the top statement I think is really important. If you were to look at every river in the humid eastern US, what you would find is that 6 times the channel width is where a 100-year flood, the size of the flood of a 2023 or 24 flood that came through the region, you need 6 times that width to actively convey that water. This is the conflict we all live with. This is probably why I have my job, is that we spend our lives living in these floodplains, our houses, our recreation, our businesses, our community centers are all in these floodplains. So again, if you go to the next slide.
So could I ask a question along those lines? You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, no.
But along those lines, so think of the Stevens Branch. You know it pretty well by now.
Sure.
Sorry. But think about, so how that statement you just made, 4 to 6 times the width, how many times deeper would the Stevens Branch River need to be to hold all that water?
It would have to be, we can look on this slide, it would have to be,
Estimate for me.
okay, 6 times the width. Let's say bankful width is 20 to 30 feet. So you're talking about 120 feet wide. I mean, it would have to be like 10 to 15 feet deeper. It's actually impossible to take the 100-year flood and put it in a river channel that size.
Okay. I just thought that was, because, we get that a lot.
Yeah,
And I think we all understand that some maintenance is necessary because not every flooding event is a 100-year event.
exactly.
So we all understand that some maintenance, but, there are always some folks in town who simply insist that if we would dredge the Stevens Branch or deepen the Stevens Branch, our problems would be solved.
Yeah.
We could, declare victory on an aircraft carrier and, and that would be that. But that simply isn't true, unfortunately.
It unfortunately is not true, just based on the sheer volume of water that come down the river in that size of a flood.
And can I just extend that thought
Sure.
experiment a little bit? If we were to dig an additional 15 feet depth to the Stevens Branch, what would that do to the banks and to the upstream and downstream?
Yeah, they would be incredibly unstable. You would literally have to build walls up and down the river the whole way through. And the cost of that, it would be incredible. And communities have tried this, and those walls don't last very long when they're under a big flood. Like Hoosick, Massachusetts has flood walls that they are now actively trying to remove, because as soon as those walls stop, there's incredible chaos and instability in the river channel that are disrupting the neighborhoods adjacent to those walls. So it's not really a sustainable way. Another question.
Go ahead, Councilor.
So we have a lot of that kind of situation going on here in Barre City where the walls of the rivers are man-made. So how does that differ from what we're talking about with our normal kind of river patterns and how dredging and, so we're talking about a man-made factor with the natural things. And I think that's the biggest thing that I hear from constituents is that, we're dealing with a river that we moved in the first place to a different spot. And we have a lot of man-made walls that are channeling our river. So it kind of puts things into a quite unique perspective.
Yeah.
At least as far as we're concerned here in Barre, where we don't see a lot of that in Montpelier or in a lot of other places.
So is the question, how do you change the management of the river if you have these flood walls, or if you, and stuff in the floodplains? Is that?
Kind of a little bit of both. I mean,
Yeah.
how do we manage the walls that we currently have, and how does the system that we're talking about, where we've already kind of established our channels,
Yeah.
does this fit into the mold of the dredging? And so that's a lot to
Yeah.
question and unpack. So
I think the one thing I'd say is that if you seek to remove sediment to resolve issues, you can do a little bit around the edges, especially with the size of the flooding we are now seeing here. The flooding we've experienced is a little unique in terms of we're seeing it more frequently and larger floods than we ever saw in the recorded history of flooding in the state. So when the old timers say we can dredge our way out of that now, well, unless you were here in 27, or 38, you probably haven't seen, 3 years of flooding like we all just lived through.
right.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, and I can kind of go back to the comments, Mayor, we were just saying, is that you really couldn't dredge your way out of containing all that water. And with the size of the flooding, now we're kind of living in this like maybe more immediate conflict zone where people are starting to make big changes, like moving houses. Like that was just not in sort of the alternatives toolbox before. And now people are understanding that a lot of us live in a hazardous place. So unfortunately, there aren't easy answers to this. There are infrastructure issues. There's local sediment management around some infrastructure. And then there's pulling back in certain areas. And the trick is sort of to find that sweet spot where your communities can thrive and exist, but there's not a lot of repeat harm to people. So it's a hard question. The more you manage, the more you pay, the more you maintain. And then at some point, we can't afford to do that. And after living through like flood recoveries in Irene 23 and 24, the future looks like at some point, we're going to run out of money to have some of our highways in their location because they keep getting damaged, or some of our community streets are going to have to change, or bridges are having to change, and you're seeing communities make those big decisions. Dredging is a small part of that equation, in my view. So I don't know if that's a helpful.
No, I think it's a lot of information. I think the question I ask has a lot of different facets to it,
Yeah.
and it's so unique that there's no really one cookie cutter way.
No, we would have done that a long time ago
Well, that-
to keep
yeah,
our
yeah.
people safe, for sure. So going back to this slide, I think this gets at trying to visualize this flood storage piece. The gray box is that bankful channel, and you can see the 6 to 8 widths at the top. And this is a mock 100-year floodplain, and each one of those is a flood storage unit. So this is sort of your natural channel. It's connected to its floodplain. And this is actually where the state is going. The state of Vermont right now has tools that are constantly evolving to seek out areas where there's space to store flood storage. And you're hearing communities, wherever there's opportunities, communities are now looking to open up and remove fill. And if there are buyouts associated with that, then they move in and lower the floodplain down to store water so everything else around it has less flooding. And here you can see you have that one light blue box, and then you have all that flood storage in those boxes. And if you go to the next slide, here's the dredging scenario. So we typically dredge, 6 feet is, 5, 6 feet we're dredging. When we go a lot, even at that level, you start to destabilize the lower half of the banks, then the banks tip out, and now we have big erosion issues, which erosion issues are probably some of the bigger issues in Vermont. As we come out of our steeper terrain and come into the lowlands, that's where the rivers really get dynamic. A lot of sediment transport changes. And here you can see, so now when you have the flood in the channel, instead of having 1 unit, if you dredge, you now have 4 units in the channel. So it's really the small flood. It's the every couple year flood in normal times, unlike we've experienced, where you might contract that flood water into the channel if they're dredged. But again, if the 10, 25 year, these larger floods start to come, you're going to have water spilling out of the channel. The bigger issue, and I think it's really important for places like Barre City, is that the water that flows in that velocity now goes faster. And that's what creates more erosion issues. And this is really one of the key issues the state really understood is they pooled all the money they're spending on floodwaters, and it was erosion hazards. So if we dig Stevens Branch way down below those granite block walls, all of a sudden the water is ripping through Barre City a lot faster, and those walls start to get destabilized. And that's really a big challenge for many communities. Montpelier's got flood walls all through it. Waterbury has some areas. And so it's a challenge to sort of, if you're going to maintain around a stormwater outfall or a bridge, can you maintain enough so you're not inducing scour at a bridge? And now we have a big transportation issue, and then you're back in maintaining a structure all the time. So the flood velocities are a lot higher. Ultimately, again, those areas tend to fill in, especially when you have a big flood, which moves a lot of sediment and wood. Next slide.
Bern Roses has her hand up.
Oh, Bern, did you have a question?
Yes, this time I do. Thank you. So I'm stepping back and going uphill from the river to things like we have some wetlands. And how much do they play a part in preventing the downhill and the stream flooding? When you're going up to the interstate in South Barre, you see there's big wetlands there. There's wetlands up above where we live, and I'm wondering how important are they into preventing flooding in the lower realms?
It's a great question. Wetlands are really essential parts of watershed storage that reduce downstream peak flows. There are these equations that approximate how much flow comes out of a watershed in the state of Vermont, and one of the variables that they found correlates with the amount of outflow is the amount of storage in that basin, and wetlands are a piece of that storage component, as well as big connected floodplains. So wetlands are important, protecting those wetlands, but also the land cover. Anything that happens in a watershed around Barrytown, Washington, Orange, that all collects water and it eventually comes downhill and gets into a river channel. So if you go up and clear cut an incredible forest area that soaks up water, that leads to a higher outflow. If you reverse and create wetlands and have an intact forested watershed, that stores water and slows the amount of water downstream. And that's common knowledge, it's well known, and you can see that in modeling as well. So good question. Next slide. I just clipped the FEMA flood insurance rate map, something we all use to evaluate flood insurance. These are made with hydraulic models of rivers. This is a very old model that we're actually in the process of updating with some current data. And it's a good visual. When you look at this, you can kind of see where the channel is, the black line, that's the Stevens Branch Channel winding across the map from bottom right to upper left. And then if you see all the cross hatching, that's the mapped floodplain here. You can see the 6 to 8 times the width in the floodplain. This is common in pretty much every floodplain map around the state of Vermont. In fact, in the region in the Northeast, all our rivers essentially function the same. They have that wider floodplain. So I just wanted to show this. One of the big outputs of a hydraulic model is the floodplain. And then we do things like change bridge sizes, create floodplains, remove floodplains, and you can see how that floodplain and the depth of flooding and the velocity of flooding change. And that's an ongoing study we're working on. We're about wrapping up the data collection. Could talk about that a little later if you're interested. Next slide.
Can I ask a question? So when you're looking at the Gunner's Brook in that, and then the part where it starts to narrow in the upper left corner, is that because of that part of Gunner's Brook, there's not as wide of a floodplain because it's steeper and it's just really moving so fast it doesn't have a chance
Exactly.
to.
So the floodplains, the width of the floodplains tend to relate to the slope of the river, the steepness, as well as where you are in the watershed. If you drive down 89, you see the Winooski, it's got really broad floodplains, often on both sides of the highway. And then clearly Gunner's Brook has way narrower floodplains. But there's way more Gunner's Brooks out there than there are Winooski rivers. In fact, there's 3/4 of the streams are really small streams. So there's a really interesting study that says, yeah, you have a lot of flood storage in those big floodplains down in the river valley. But if you added all of them up in around the mountainous area and the hill areas of Vermont, they actually start to substantially add to floodplain storage. So some of those little filling projects where we've leveled a land, put a home or have a business or have a road crossing, those collectively take away a lot of that storage, even in the upper watershed. So as part of the Functioning Floodplains Initiative, where the state's looking for storage, it's not only in the big bottom valley lands, like Stevens Branch to me is a bottom valley river, gets a lot flatter, but as soon as you get just outside the city limits, you're up on steeper rivers that are all feeding into the Stevens, as you know. So it's a combination. You kind of need both because there's so many more small, steep rivers with narrower floodplains coming into the channels. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about where you would dredge. Undersized bridges, particularly near breaks and valley slopes. So as rivers are moving sediment, the river sloping down, where the river flattens out, those are natural accumulation areas. And there's a lot of them. These are every different scale in Vermont. So there's a lot of local ones actually on the edges of the city limits as you have the hill terrain flattens out. And then we see a lot of sediment buildup or aggradation at rivers. And I'm going to show you an example where we've been working with the town of Bennington to assess the sediment deposit areas and come up with a plan on how to manage it, as well as do some other projects. So on these, and then there are these things called alluvial fans. They're basically those breaks and slopes, and a lot of us live right around those, and businesses are located in those areas. And then finally, bridges, culverts, dams, levees, when they go out of design compliance, and that means they can't pass the flood they were designed to pass, that's the time you dredge. So when you have stormwater outfalls that need to discharge water, or else you get flooding in your city, if those get covered, you're going to get a permit to clean those out, as you all have. Next slide.
Just a thought. So in nature, if we were just in a field somewhere and sediment was building up and we were not interfering by dredging or planning on doing anything else, What would eventually happen? Would it build up sediment enough to change the course of the river?
Yeah, so rivers aren't static in the landscape, and this is fundamentally the concept the issue we all live with is that when early peoples came to these parts, they had non-permanent trails and pathways and hunting grounds. And then we came looking for mechanical power, and then all of our towns and cities landed in these spots. So we can't allow the Stevens Branch to move in most locations. Ideally, there's what's called the river corridor. This is about 6 times the bankful width. It's very similar to the floodplain of a 100-year flood. And protecting that river corridor is essential, really because the river can move back and forth and establish the slope it needs to either store or transport sediment naturally. So we're in the way of that river corridor. And this is another big strategy by the state. Wherever there is space and willing parties, the state will often implement a river corridor easement. They pay a landowner, and this says that the river can have the space to like naturally function and move its sediment and be less erosive, essentially. So the river corridor protection is another part of it. So we may be looking at bridges in Barre City and opening up some pocket floodplains, but also up in Barre Town and out on the hills, like protecting these river corridors so the river has space to move, deposit sediment up there, and then jump and move around and kind of have that space is really an important part of the conversation. Next slide. So here's an alluvial fan. This is probably our most infamous alluvial fan. That's Route 100 in Plymouth. It's called Moneybrook. It's a teeny channel. And there's some incredible historic photos that the landowners who used to all live in this really dangerous spot out of like old snow plows plowing off Route 100 because there's literally feet of sediment stacked up. And so there's a lot of work going on. There's a small bridge there that fills up with sediment whenever a big flood comes through. Next slide. That's probably the most extreme case in the state, but that happens on a very small scale. This is the alluvial fan that the town of Bennington sits on, and they had some extreme damage in Irene. And the reason I bring this up is they've done a lot of different flood mitigation alternatives that have been looked at around central Vermont. They've reconnected floodplains. They are actively managing their rivers in certain locations, and I wanted to explain how that happens and what permitting that process goes through. But the fundamental issue is what Councilor Gusson just said, that the blue line there shows where the natural river width was. Like this river is actually domed, so the river channel wants to migrate around through thick areas of sediment. And what's happened over the history of Bennington is that these neighborhoods have all built up on that alluvial fan. And then over the years, that river got squeezed down to the yellow lines. And then we just did a project with them, well, not just, but about the last 10 years, to widen that river out to the black line, several hundred feet of reconnecting the floodplains after there were some damages, some buyouts, mostly of an industrial property, and that gave them more space to reduce the sediment. Having to manage the sediment at one of their costly bridges was the first bridge I showed. So next slide, I'll walk through that. So we did some hydraulic modeling. We built a sediment transport model, and I just wanted to show this because I found this really instructive. What you're looking at is a graph of the change of the elevation of the river when a flood comes through a riverbed. So let's start on the left one. The 0 is kind of where the riverbed started. +4 means that 4 feet of sediment accumulated at the area, and then -4 would mean that 4 feet of sediment removed. And what you see is when we passed a large flood through the Roaring Branch in Bennington, a 4-foot area clogged up the Park Street Bridge. The first thing people said was, we're going to clean the bridge out, we're going to dredge it, and we ended up doing that. In the upper right corner, this is what happens in the riverbed when you remove that 4 feet of sediment and put another flood through there. The 4 feet of sediment come back in the same location. And then what we did was we looked at an alternative where we reconnected about 15 acres of floodplain through this buyout process. It's the bottom right, put the flood back in there. And now what you see is that the bumps on the river channel are kind of spread out, and that's over a mile of river. They don't all land in one spot. And this is fundamentally a different approach. We don't we have our bridges that are either fit or don't fit, and then we have some encroachments, and as we pull back, the sediment can kind of spread out on that floodplain, and then the river can safely pass the flood under the bridges. Right now, a lot of us are caught in the cycle where the bridges are small and there aren't floodplains and the sediment can't get out of the river, so it does land at the bridges, and then we have to go in, we have to rebuild up, and we have to kind of clean those out. And that's kind of the cycle a lot of communities are stuck in. When opportunities come up to reconnect that floodplain, you can kind of get out of that cycle, and the sediment is out on the floodplain and your rivers have more capacity. So I just wanted to share that. And if you go to the next slide. So this is a view looking from the bridge upstream, and you can see on the left, there was historic fill. There was an old trolley line to move large quarried stone up and down this area at the turn of the century. The trolley line was no longer used. The tracks had been out for ages. So we did a project where we pulled about 10 to 14 acres of floodplain, all that fill out, and then reconnected the floodplain you see where it says restored floodplain. And that's part of the story is this bridge was clogging at a really high frequency rate. Like every other year they're in there having to dig it out because the bridge literally would fill up. And now we've knocked the need for maintenance and the cost of managing this bridge way back. So, every 10, 20 years when there's a big flood, they have to go in there and clean out the bridge, but they're not cleaning it out, every year. If you go to the next slide. So what we did was we did some survey. We had our hydraulic model like we're working on for you all, and we set up sediment thresholds. And so if you go to the next slide, this is a little complicated, but what it shows, this is as if there's a cross-section cut right in front of the bridge. The top black line is the metal beam at the bottom of the bridge. And the angled black line are the sediment levels. And as they go up and to the right, you can see they eventually hit this red zone where it says fail. And that means that the design flood for this bridge, the 50-year flood, can no longer fit through the bridge with the 2 feet of freeboard required by design. That's the VTrans standard for this bridge, 50-year flood with 2 feet of space. 2 feet of space is so when trees come down in the 50-year flood, they can pass under the bridge and not clog up. This was really common in Barre City. All those bridges filled way up. The trees had no chance, and then the river spilling out and going through the neighborhoods. So then they monitor the bridge. When it gets into the red zone, the state knows, Army Corps knows that they can apply for those permits, and they've done it. And now they know that the reason they're doing it is because the bridge is now out of design compliance. And that's when you can get a permit. And the permits are not hard to get once you have this information in place from the hydraulic modeling. So I just wanted to show that as one example where there's a town actively dredging in a spot where excessive sediment transport, there's really no way to get around it. They've restored floodplains. They're working on all these projects, but there is still some maintenance taking place. Next slide. I think that was it. Leave it for questions, comment.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so Berlin Bridge has been discussed. Back in the 50s,
There it is.
that river was 3 times the size it is now. So that's one reason why it's clogging up. Number 2, if you go down there, the storm sewage is below the sediment. So basically, it hasn't been cleaned out when it should have been.
Yeah. We dug up some historical photos of that area. There were some granite sheds in the area still, but they were way further back and the river was way wider. And now there's buildings all along the river and the river's kind of been narrowed down. So it's a difficult issue. I believe there was some sediment management this year to in fact free that. We've been talking with DPW about what's going on in the rivers.
Yeah, if I might, Mayor, I was just looking up our permit. We got a stream alteration permit for removal of up to 200 cubic yards of gravel right at that site. So
So I guess my point is that dredging does work, or can work on certain, and on what administration stopped dredging? Do you remember? Who was in charge?
I think it might have been, I don't know for sure, but I know in the Douglas administration, I think that might have been when one of the early administrations there, when that change started to
There
happen.
was nothing based on wildlife, like frogs or,
I think there's a few reasons. Pretty much a lot of the work we do are governed by three things. Like risk in public safety is probably at the top of the list. Water quality, downstream in rivers in Lake Champlain and other river systems, and then fisheries and in-stream habitat. So a lot of the decision-making I've seen at the state level has kind of been a function of all three of those collectively, with, in my view, a little bit more of a lean towards the safety and the instability of the river systems that can affect other properties.
I bring all this up because Berlin Bridges, Ward 3, which is the ward I'm in, and last week, they've been contemplating taking that bridge out. Now, we just put a new police station, fire station down there. So I counted at the belt line where they would have to go, and there's so many trains going, it was 16 minutes that held traffic up. So if the police need to get up there, I mean, I think dredging would be a better alternative.
Yep, I mean, the dredging, I think the dredging you've done in that area, again, gets you a little bit of flood storage, but really it's daylighting the stormwater discharge that sits at that bridge. I think fundamentally that's the main reason. You're not gonna change the flood pattern by doing a local dredging project like that. There's not a lot of space like between those walls to go down enough to really like contract that floodplain.
At least go below the storage sewer system.
Yeah.
Right now it's below it's clogged, basically.
Okay, I think it's free now.
Is it?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
You have a question, Counselor?
So there's some storage space it looks down after the Willie Street Bridge. And I know that I think maybe earlier in the year, we had kind of talked about the potential about what it might look like to kind of open some of that or reconnect it. Is there any thought that you might have regarding that?
And is this the Ayers Auto site, right on the upstream river right side looking
So that's
down?
the FEMA
Ayers
stuff that we're
is
talking
before
about.
Willie.
But past the bridge, if you continue to go down, there's a lot of wooded area next, I don't want to say next to the belt line, but it sits to the river and sits in between the belt line.
Okay,
And there's just a lot of open, looks like would-be flood storage space. I know that we had potentially talked about how we could lower that to reconnect the floodplain there.
a little more storage there.
So what I'm really asking is, how much of an impact would that have upstream in Barre City for things like the Willie Street Bridge, where we're talking about flooding, where we're talking about the Berlin Street Bridge as well? That extra flood storage down there, would that alleviate some of the catastrophe?
Yeah. I guess the answer is I don't know right now. However, this is the heart of the project we're working on, building the model where we can test almost anything. We could take every bridge out and see if a big flood can come through the city. And then, I'm not saying we're going to, but I'm saying we could just test it. Or we could magically make every bridge 10 feet wider and see what happens. Or we could reconnect the floodplain. So these are the kind of things we'll be evaluating and to give you answers. I just don't have those quite yet.
It's okay.
And that's what excites me most about your work. I mean, hope you like it here. I suspect you'll be coming by.
Definitely.
Well,
years
because
ahead of
it's
you.
important, before we look at projects, people are screaming, just dredge. Okay, so how much did it cost us? We don't own a long reach excavator. What did that cost us to rent per hour?
I don't remember, but it's not cheap.
It's $250, I think, an hour. I mean, it's not inexpensive. So you look at, for a city like Barre, we don't have a blank check, and no one's going to write us a blank check. So we're using our money, taxpayer money, mostly. There are some mitigation grant opportunities, but we're using our money. And so when you come in, I really pay attention, because what's important is, if I told Nicholas he had to come up with $1 million in flood mitigation money, he'd turn green. Because I know we don't have that kind of money. So we have to be really careful about how we spend it. So that's why I'm really excited for you to be able to say, okay, if we take this bridge out, what happens? Now run some water through, what happens? Okay, well, what if we do this instead? What if we acquire these two properties and open this floodplain up and try to direct the water and the sediment, what happens then? And we can pick the most cost-effective projects. So, every time you come in, I learn something, so thank you. No, and what I'm learning is that I have to tell people what they don't want to hear. In a 100-year flood, all bets are off. There is no saving Barre City.
We're in a valley.
Well, exactly. But 2011 was not a 100-year flood. I don't believe 2015 was a 100-year flood. So there are going to be other flooding events where we can say, and when I say save our city's not going to wash down. You saw the result in 2023. That's what it's going to look like. And that, unfortunately, is our reality. But in 2011, 2015, probably even 2024, and certainly during Irene, we flooded to a much lesser degree. So if we can increase our storage capacity, help water run through the city, okay, if a 23 comes around, sorry, all bets are off. There's going to be some pretty severe damage. But if an 11, 15, 24 come around, we can make things significantly better. Is that an accurate statement, or?
That is, yeah, and that is the beauty of like having the model, is you can just test all these scenarios, different size floods, and really see. And one thing I learned in the flood from working and helping people is that every inch of flood water is more damages. That's why the cost of compensation for damages from FEMA is associated with the depth of the flooding. So like, even if you don't completely eliminate the flooding, if you make a big change at a bridge and restore a couple floodplains, and you can contract that floodplain and pull it down, it makes a big difference. So going back, I didn't really answer your question. Like, there are things that affect flooding on the downstream side of an area you're concerned about and on the upstream side. And you have to make sure water can kind of flow freely into, through, and out with some storage to sort of like deal with the rising flood and the leaving flood. And sometimes on the leaving flood, there's like debris and sediment everywhere, which we know. Sometimes there's ice depending when that flood comes. So those are all the kind of things we can test with the modeling and sort of try to identify alternatives. I mean, the great thing is you all have an incredible list from that river project of 50 some odd projects. And when we first started looking at them, they all were making a really good improvement. So now we're going to really dig deep and to try to come up with a suite of alternatives that can really change the flood patterns through the city. So
Thank you.
Something to be optimistic
And
for.
one last thing, there may be a member of the council who asks you what the effect would be if we blew something up. So I just wanted you to be prepared.
Okay.
I just wanted you to be prepared for that, the next time you come in. You're welcome.
That's not my next question.
Councilor Gumpton?
I'm still bummed they removed the trestle under dead of night,
Okay.
is where this comes from. This is a little bit of a thought experiment, and I know you and I have been, and the manager have been to many, many of these regional flood conversations and regional forums. I'm having lunch with people from Montpelier and Waterbury on Monday to continue these conversations. But one of the things I think I'm taking away tonight is something I've been thinking about a lot, is that I think we're doing a really good job here in Barre City. We're identifying places where we can make improvements. We are taking big leaps forward. We're really working on our understanding. We are a relatively small river valley municipality, and that a lot of our flood risk is dependent on our neighboring municipalities. And, we've been talking about this a lot, that the river belongs to a region and not just to one municipality. I guess I'm wondering if you've been in any rooms where there's like really big thought experiments going on, where you looked at the sweep of the Winooski River and all its tributaries, and you said, there's land proactively identifying that if we could turn that 20 acres, irrespective of any individual municipality, into a large floodplain, we can make the argument it will benefit these 5 municipalities down the road, and sort of trying to put together that regional, I don't know, somewhere between pressure and incentive for municipalities to sort of take, it's not even taking responsibility for their own thing, because another municipality doesn't necessarily owe us not to flood.
Unless you're overbuilding your municipality and using up floodplain that does affect another municipality, then there is a level, in my opinion, there is a level of culpability there.
Yeah.
Now, if it's just
More municipalities.
sitting there and someone else can use it, well, my opinion would probably be more along the lines of that municipality should allow us to buy it, and it unfortunately would be exempt because it would go straight to the purpose of a municipality, which, number one in my mind, is public safety.
So there could be a model for a municipality purchasing land outside its own borders to ensure its own flood safety?
Yeah, I think that's, well, I mean, what incentive? Let's think about the world we live in. And it doesn't mean people are mean, but let's use Berlin as an example. What motivation is there within the taxpayers of Berlin to stop flooding in Barre City or mitigate flooding in Barre City? Other than, hey, I want to be a good human being, and everyone wants to be a good human being until they have to pull their wallet out. And then it's like, maybe not. No, and it doesn't mean they're bad. That's how we all behave. So yeah, I do think a municipality should be able to purchase land in another municipality, not pay taxes on it, if they, through science, can show that this will reduce damage, which, look, we send the bill on some level to the state of Vermont. We certainly send it to the federal government, and we pick it up locally. So if we can show an overall public benefit, yeah, I do believe that.
This also feels like an argument for county government to me.
Well, I believe in county form of government too, but that's a whole different deal in Vermont.
Right, yes.
But no, this is great. I mean, like I said, I always learn something when you come in, so, so thank you. Anything else, council?
Appreciate you.
Huge thank you.
Thank you again for your good work, for working
Thank you.
with us, and we'll look forward to the next time. Chief, are you ready? Thank you for your patience, Chief. Council will be moving on to 8B and getting an update on the implementation of the public conduct ordinance.
Mine is not as extravagant as the flood
Well-
mitigation. That was pretty impressive.
But I'd say the work is just as or more important. So thank you, and thank you to all of the officers who serve with you.
Appreciate that. So I pulled some stats out of our system for the city-owned properties that we've had responses to, and drilled down to what specifically related to what would fall under the ordinance. For instance, we had 28 responses to City Hall Park, but only 17 of those were ordinance related. That's fire.
Yeah, I know, I do the same thing.
That's fire, I'm good. Hey,
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
so
28 to,
we had 28 responses to City Hall Park since the ordinance went into effect on July 17th. However, only 17 of those were ordinance related under the public conduct ordinance. Out of those directly at City Hall Park, 12 incidents resulted in verbal warnings. If you remember, in the ordinance, there was a specific language that said we have to give a verbal warning first. Out of those 17, 5 incidents resulted in the issuance of a one-day trespass notice being provided. We've had, up at the auditorium and the BOR, we've had 17 responses up there. And out of those, 14 would have fallen under the ordinance stipulations. 13 of those resulted in verbal warnings being provided. One incident, and the only incident in all of the city that resulted in a 180-day trespass notice being issued. This individual was exhibiting violent behavior and smashing items on the ground and causing an unsafe place, if you would, around his vehicle. So he got a 180-day trespass notice. We've had 2 at Denty Park and 3 at Courier, 3 at the Rotary and Playground 2000, and then 1 at Mathewson. And all of those resulted in verbal warnings being issued. So out of the ordinance, there's only been 5 one-day trespass notices given and 1 180-day trespass notice is being given. This is we've worked in concert with other efforts that we've been looking at such as you've heard and seen about the parking changes we did over by City Hall Park. We've had enhanced, the facilities folks have been doing an enhanced refuse pickup. We've had tree trimming done over there for better visibility, increased foot and directed patrols in the area. And since all of that, the reports of the quality of life issues has decreased greatly, specifically in City Hall Park. We are cognizant of the fact that this could have pushed some of the stuff out to other areas. For instance, like Rotary Park, we did see an uptick in folks hanging around down there. It's hard to discern if they're just parked there or obviously if they're partaking in activity. Like I said, we did have 3 of those calls down there that resulted in activity related to the ordinance.
I don't know how to ask this question. How many are repeat offenders out of all these?
None so far.
Really?
Right. The verbal warnings, honestly, I was actually surprised.
Yeah, I mean.
The verbal warnings, the officers have been explaining the ordinance and indicating that they could be trespassed. So there's not anyone that I found that was repeat offenders.
So I guess my question is simply, having enacted the ordinance, was in favor of the ordinance, as were you, worth it or not worth it, in your opinion, in terms of improving the quality of life in our city and providing your officers with the tools they need to try to deter or change behavior?
I think it was worth it. And again, it came in towards the tail end of the season,
Right.
and we are entering a cooler weather stage. I'd be interested to see, as hot weather comes back next year, like in May, June, how things play out, but I think it was worth it. And I think it gives the tool for accountability to hold those individuals accountable, because if they do violate the trespass notice, then they could be introduced into the criminal justice system. Fortunately, we didn't have any of that this year.
Good. Council, questions? Yes.
So thank you for coming back with numbers. I know that was one of the things I had asked for when we discussed this the first time. So these feel like generally positive results, that you are seeing sort of a decrease in some of the challenges that we had seen. I would be really interested in another 6 months in sort of numbers, especially as you say, we start to change seasons. I'd be really interested in numbers. You mentioned a decrease in City Hall quality of life sort of citations and complaints. I'd be interested to see what that looks like going forward. And of course, we're looking at sort of a years-long bending the curve going on here. And I think I would also be remiss in saying that I'm deeply appreciative of the work the officers are doing, and I do think this is a useful tool for us. But I feel like in the last couple of months, we've also hit a pretty good stride in coordinating services to folks with the situation table.
Right. I was going to mention that as well, with the situation table in there. That's designed to kind of identify something before it happens and results in these types of behaviors.
Do you see the situation table working in sort of concert with this ordinance?
Yeah, to an extent. It's the situation table is bringing the wraparound supports, and a lot of it, I know Tess was in here, I don't know if she hit on the elevated risk factors. Usually mental health is always identified as one of those risk factors. I had a discussion with Gary Gordon from Washington County Mental Health today about that. And I asked him, I said, every time we go to the situation table, it seems like you're Johnny on the spot. You're always the one that has to deal with this, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because the table's identified those risk factors and somebody has to deal with them. And it's with the mental health component, they're the ones that have to deal with that. So it will work in concert with that. To what extent, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Is it prevalent that the officers feel that now they're making people accountable? I mean, before, being an officer out there and not be able to do anything, even though, there is a lot of, it's well balanced as far as what you can do. But I'm just curious if you could really see that officers feel like, hey, I'm glad now that we have a little more, ability to make them accountable. Because morale's a big thing.
We're also working with the state's attorney's office. We had a meeting recently about certain things, because I opened my mouth in public. So it's multifaceted. It's not just this specific ordinance, but with Governor Scott coming forward with his public safety plans, and continuing down that path, I think it'll keep increasing, if that answers the question.
Yes.
So would you say that based on your last couple of words, that we are making progress in the fight of making sure that people can have a good quality of life here in Barre City?
I think so. There's still work to be done.
Certainly.
There's always room for improvement. But
But we're making an effort. We're
we're making an effort. We're ringing the bells, and folks are listening. So.
Thank you, sir.
Connie, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I saw an officer walking the beat the other night, and that was good. I'd like to see it more because there are still lots of bicycles on the sidewalk. Okay, thank you. Bye.
I know how you can fix it.
It's, no, I mean, first of all, Chief, I think we all appreciated the letter, the op-ed that you wrote regarding accountability. It was something that we all took to heart. I really pay attention to what is going on in Chittenden County, what is going on with the special prosecutor and the special court to try to streamline all of that. And I can tell the council, I've already put in a bid with the governor that we're next. That once they work the bugs out in Chittenden County, we'd love to get that prosecutor back here to Barre, where he's from. And listen, I'm proud of the work that he's doing up in Chittenden County. But yeah, you talked about ringing a bell. That really rang my bell in terms of accountability on all sides. And it's something that we don't see enough of right now.
And regarding that, I haven't seen any statistics from, and I know we just recently started up there, but I'd be interested to see like what cases have gone through there, and I haven't been able to find those yet.
They just barely, I think, it's no more than 10 days ago, even announced the presiding judge. So I think they just started, they literally just started moving cases through. And I don't know that they've even started moving cases through other than setting up the docket. As you know, even when they're trying to streamline them, you've got to give defense attorneys notice in terms of, when they're to appear. So I think when you talk to people about it, it's going to take everyone getting used to, we're so used to this process where we kind of turtle along. It's going to take everyone a little bit of time to get used to the jackrabbit.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have two questions. One is regarding I still see people who are, on social media complaining about, people breaking into cars, people coming on their porch. Is there more of that or less of that, or is it about the same? Because I'm wondering, like, if we're pushing more people out into neighborhoods and it's sort of.
If you follow the social media Facebook groups.
I try not to, but.
I have to, only because I want to keep my thumb on the pulse.
Yeah.
It seems like it's more prevalent.
Yeah.
But when you look at the calls, I mean, somebody went on there, for instance, I think it was this morning, and said I was walking my dog and somebody came out from behind a dumpster and chased me. And so I instantly went through all our records and I'm like, I can't find anything. So I don't know if it was even Barre Town or Barre City or where it was. So it has that pile-on effect, and then people just get all, riled up about it. So I try to drill down and say, I'm going to look into this, and it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh,
The other question I had was, I share this story because I'm thinking about the mental health issue, but I wonder if part of the issue that we're having is, I think about the people who, and I don't know if the people that you're no trespassing are unhoused, if they have homes, if they're crashing on someone's couch. I don't know what their situations are. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I think about someone who might be trying to survive without a home and how that would just impact their mental health. And I'm hoping that if we can get them to a place where they'd have a safe place to keep their stuff and fall asleep, that might impact their mental health. And I don't know how those things, I'd love to have a conversation with whoever it is that sits at your situation table.
I would imagine that, facing some of those issues can have
Yeah.
a play on someone's mental health.
Yeah. I just imagine what it would be like if I was trying to like take care of myself and protect myself all day long, every day. It would just, I could see how that would really impact your life. So, thank you.
I think there's a whole different level of activity, and I'll give you an example. So I get a call from someone who has a property next to my business that they had some tires ripped off the other night, kind of looking at my cameras. So I went in there and looked at my cameras. It was Saturday night, 12:30, and I see 4 guys walk across my parking lot, all dressed in dark clothing with masks. We had a car that we had just reconned, a Volvo, and they came up to it and they split 2 and 2. They knew what they were doing. They couldn't get into it, so then they went over to that property and took those tires, and they didn't leave in a car. They walked right back across my parking lot. So I think the people that this ordinance is for are not these hardened criminals at night. I mean, they were prepared. They know what they were doing, and that's a whole different level that hopefully we're gonna have to discuss at some point.
Anything else? Yes.
I would just add to sort of the brief conversation there about sort of reports on social media and how representative they are of what you're seeing as statistical trends and so on. And I guess I would encourage folks who are reporting things on social media to also report them to our police department so that they can do the work they're very good at and correlate trends and investigate challenges and problems, because a post on Facebook is not an actual police report of a problem, and that we can't account for them and solve them unless we get an actual report of a problem. So just wanted to, I don't even put words in your mouth, but that felt like useful.
Anything else, Council? Chief, thank you. Once again,
Thank
like
you.
you said, we have more work to do, we know that. But you're willing to do the hard work. The officers under your command are certainly willing to do the hard work, and let them know we appreciate them every day. All right.
Are we keeping you?
Stick around for the other.
If you don't, yeah, if you don't
For
mind,
the
you mind sticking up for a
entertainment
little bit?
value if you want, but.
Yeah, maybe just for a little bit. I don't think it'll be too long. Thank you. You get to stay.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Have a good evening. Council, we're going to move to 8C on the agenda. This is to discuss the creation of a nuisance property ordinance. I believe this is yours,
Yes,
Nicholas.
thank you, Mayor. So Council, in your packet, I included the ordinance that was adopted this December in St. Albans. It's a public nuisance properties ordinance. We had looked at this when we did the whole public conduct ordinance here in Barre this summer. As you might recall, our first model that we looked at was Brattleboro, and Brattleboro had done sort of a really comprehensive ordinance of both public conduct plus nuisance properties. I think we scaled back to focus really on the public conduct in July, and we said we'd come back to you with a nuisance property proposal later in the year. We've done some research into this. The chief had an opportunity to talk to his counterparts in St. Albans, and we looked at what they did, and we really liked it. And I know that this is, I've heard from many of you about these types of challenging properties across the city. And so what today's agenda item is intended to be is to show you what we saw that we liked. We can walk through it if you'd like. It's a pretty simple ordinance, really. what I really was hoping to get is your initial feedback so that I can come back to you with a first reading that is reflective of, your thoughts, and so we can get closer on a first reading to a finished product after getting your feedback. So happy, Mayor, if you think it's helpful, I can just, it's, like I said, it's really simple. I can walk through it, which is.
I think you provided it in the packet. I'm sure the council had an opportunity to read it. I guess, my question for Nicholas or the chief is, where does tenant accountability come into this? We can, so as I read the ordinance, it says, okay, so if a rental unit that has received 3 or more criminal citations within, this is within the ordinance. So if someone owns a rental property, someone who lives on that property receives 3 criminal citations, that property is deemed to be a public nuisance property. So you got a case where a landlord wants that tenant out of there, the tenant doesn't want to leave. This is Vermont. If a tenant doesn't want to leave and they've got enough legal aid help, see you in a year. So how does that, I just want to make sure that if we're saying to a landlord who wants a drug dealer on their property who isn't paying rent, how do we go about saying to that drug dealer, we want your drug dealing ass in council chambers, and we want to talk to you?
Right. So obviously depending on what that citation would be for, there is accountability, introducing them into the criminal justice system. On that, the gist of the ordinance is for those landlords that aren't doing their part in not getting the process started to evict those individuals or hold those individuals accountable. And that's what the gist of the ordinance is. There, and I do understand there would be some of those challenges with when you have an eviction process, it can take some time.
And how does that affect any determination or hearing if the landlord doesn't want them there anymore? If they unfortunately screened that tenant or maybe didn't screen that tenant properly and just didn't understand that
I would
they were
hope-
dealing with or renting to a drug dealer.
I would hope going towards the screening process, I would hope that if this is enacted, that landlords would be doing more of a due diligence to screen their tenants and not just have random folks coming in there, and they would uphold their part of the bargain. We see a lot of individuals that aren't on the leases that are in these apartments causing some havoc, and the landlords aren't doing their diligence to say, hey, you can't have these individuals here, they gotta leave or whatnot. So hopefully that would help with that. But again, I do recognize some of those challenges with the eviction process.
Yeah, and that's a tough one because, listen, tenants have rights, landlords have rights. Thankfully, in 35 years as someone who has rented residential and commercial property, we've had 1 eviction in 35 years. And it had nothing to do with drugs. It was just someone who decided they didn't want to pay rent anymore. But tenants have certain rights. And if a tenant wants to have guests in their home, just like you and I can have guests in our home, that's a right that they enjoy, and it's a right they should enjoy. So, like I said, I mean, for nothing more than entertainment value, I'd love to see in this ordinance the council's ability to say to the tenant, you come in here with the landlord because we want to have a conversation with you about what you're doing to your neighbors and about what you're doing to the neighborhood. So I just want to make sure, we talked about accountability earlier in the meeting. I want to make sure there's equal accountability. Now, we're not a court of law. We cannot subpoena a tenant to be here. Like I said, it would probably be for entertainment value only because we don't have any real authority as a Barre City Council. But I want to make sure that the landlords here understand that we are going to be sympathetic to folks who are trying to do the right thing but are unable to evict a problem tenant.
And I think that's a very valid point. And I think the way St. Albans seems to have addressed this is that their threshold is ordering initiation of a proceeding. It's not successful completion within a certain period. It's not a specific timeframe. But I think if we are in a situation where there is a problematic tenant, part of this nuisance abatement plan might include the initiation of the eviction proceeding. So what we would hold a landlord accountable for is not initiating it, not necessarily how long it takes or how it's adjudicated. Is that fair? Yeah.
But if the officer finds that, or the building inspector finds that it's really not a landlord, it's a tenant issue. It's this guy with three pending, with three pending charges. I just want to be able to cite that person and do a hearing.
Absolutely.
Because, hey, equal time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but any good lease, I've owned several apartment houses, any good lease would give you the ability to get rid of that tenant.
Try and do it.
I have, believe me.
Try and do
I've
it,
gone to court
try and do it in
many
under 6 months with someone who
times.
doesn't
Well, no,
want to
that's a
go.
lo- I'm just saying, there is some laws that you could utilize if they don't.
Oh, yeah.
I end up at the end, having the sheriffs literally physically move them out, but I'm just saying, there are leases of, and I thank you, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, for giving me one of those leases. So,
Counselor Spaulding?
I have a few questions. One, I did go to look this up in the, for the city of St. Albans or town or whatever it is. And this is listed under their fire, whatever ordinances. And so this has the fire chief or fire marshal will serve as the city's enforcement officer. Would that be the same for us?
It might, I mean, it could be cross-jurisdictional. It likely fits there the best, and certainly with a police component on the calls to the property.
Well, because I'm thinking like, if a fire person shows up at my house and is trying to like tell me what to do, like I would kind of be like, why are you here telling me what to do? Like, why aren't the police coming here to tell me what to do? It just would be odd to me.
Yeah.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I don't know, that should be a little bit more clear.
Yep.
And then the one thing I was thinking about property owners, especially when we have larger properties like the Barre Housing Authority, how is that going to be taken into consideration?
Volume discount.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the manager and I discussed when we were batting this idea around, that the Barre Housing Authority would obviously fall into this, and we would have to discuss how to go about that.
Yeah.
Because those would probably be your largest calls of going back to those individual apartments over and over again, depending on what the issues were.
Well, and then I guess the other question I would have for the Barre Housing Authority is, are they feeling like their hands are tied? Like what is the reason for, I don't know.
Yeah,
We don't have to get into that. I'm just saying, I'm curious, like, why those people who are causing so many problems aren't
I think they
being.
feel the same frustrations, is my understanding in talking with Jamie. So something like this might interestingly be refreshing to them, to have a nuisance abatement plan that they can sort of enforce may be helpful to have in their hands. So some landlords may find it helpful to have the sort of the force of a city abatement plan behind them when they ask their tenants to change behaviors.
Okay.
Now, I know that they also are, it's a HUD, it's a federal connected entity, probably even harder eviction rules than we have in the state of Vermont. So we have to, I think, temper our expectations with that. I know St. Albans, and that's a specific question I can ask my counterpart, because I believe they have a St. Albans Housing Authority as well, if I recall. I'll check on that. I think in some ways they may benefit from having sort of the force of having to do it, because of this ordinance, to have something to go to tenants with task for changes in behavior.
Yeah. So I have just a few more things. I'm so sorry. I'm concerned about the the types of calls and how it could be subjective. Like if you have a neighbor who's just like hates you and wants you to move and they just keep calling, how do you like make sure that it's not being really subjective? Like, oh, this neighbor's just trying to get these people kicked out, you know, because they don't like them.
And we can usually identify those. For
Okay.
instance, we have a particular place that we go to for noise disturbances
Okay,
quite frequently, and I think there's more of a mental health component there because it's not really a noise complaint, if you will.
so it won't fall under this necessarily?
Right, so,
Okay.
so we can usually identify those places quite quickly based on what we see when we get there and the frequency of like non-action that,
Okay.
like, we really can't do anything because it's paper thin walls and this or that, and
Okay, well, I was concerned about that. I have two more things. One, I just am concerned that I don't want this to push landlords away from renting. You know, like, I'm really concerned about that because obviously we have a lack of housing and I don't want people to just say, well, then I just won't rent. I just won't do it because I don't, you know, it's too difficult to try to get people out. It's difficult to, you know, go through that process of the background checks or whatever. So that's a concern of mine. And then the last one is, why is it only for rentals? Because what if you have a property owner who is just the bad apple and they're the ones that need to be not evicted, but like held accountable?
are you saying like,
They own the property
so they live there, they own the property?
and they're the problem.
Yeah, as written, this doesn't cover that.
Oh, boy,
That doesn't cover that.
pesky little thing called the Constitution.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, you've got, like, we
I-
have homes that we've talked about where people are really a problem and they own those homes. So how do I,
When it reaches a certain level, where it becomes like an asset seizure, but usually that's going down the drug realm of that, there is a mechanism in the state where you can do that.
okay,
I haven't really seen it used. I've seen it threatened down where I came from. It was actually on a hotel, where they were just going to seize the hotel and force the person to clean everything up, and it worked well. But that same statute would be able to be used for a owned home.
and I'm not saying, like, but I feel like I'm sure you go to nuisance properties and the homeowner,
Absolutely.
they own the home.
Absolutely.
So how do we also get them to be accountable to their neighbors, you know, that's,
If
their
if
to
it
their
crosses the
neighbors?
realm into,
the other community, you know?
Counselor, I agree. I mean, so many of the problems that we have now are simply a lack of accountability. You know, even if you allow your property to just fall into disrepair and it affects your neighbors, well, you should be accountable. You know, yes, property ownership is a right, but it's also a privilege for some people. You know, a lot of people don't have a home and would love to have a home and would take good care of it. So it bothers me when you go around neighborhoods and you see someone who just literally won't pick up their garbage. It's like, I'm not asking you to paint your, you know, I'm not making a statement here asking you to paint your house and fix everything maybe you can't afford to, but you can pick up garbage, you can mow your lawn, that, you know, so, okay, we won't go down that road. But as far as, listen, I'm all for this. If it holds bad landlords accountable, I'm all for it. You know, I trust the city. I certainly trust Nick Copping. I trust Joe Aldsworth. I trust folks in the city. I trust your officers. I trust folks in the city to work with landlords, and I trust them to know the difference between a landlord who's really engaged in best practices and just has a tenant that they want out. They are trying to evict. And this tenant, as you know, Chief, sometimes when an eviction notice is served, things actually get worse for a while. Tenant engages, they're not happy, they engage in some retaliatory behavior, and for a period of time, it can actually get worse. And the only time it actually gets better is when probably a year or so down the road where they realize, okay, I'm going, I might as well. But sometimes it even gets worse then. So I just want to make sure that there's that level of discretion where, like you were just saying, Counselor, we're not discouraging, we're not labeling someone, you know, it's not the scarlet letter. And we're not labeling this is a problem property, best landlord in the world, best property in the world, but they have a crappy tenant, therefore I'm going to make it reflect only on the landlord. That's what I'm really concerned about. I talk to our landlords often. Most of our landlords are good people, working hard, engaged in best practices. We have some bad landlords, most of them who don't live here. Because when you live here, I have to look you and you and you in the eye, and if I'm not maintaining my property, it's embarrassing if I live here. So, yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now and we'll finish up. Counselor Guston.
Certainly. Just a couple of questions. I had the same question as Councilor Spalding, which is that as written, this currently only applies to rental properties. And that certainly this is a problem we see at owner occupied or however you want to describe it as well. So I would be interested, I understand that there are different challenges around holding a property owner accountable than there are mechanisms to hold a tenant accountable, but I would be sort of interested in what options we could have. There are some of the very end there, the city council's decision may provide for combination of the following. There is order property owner to perform necessary building or maintenance and things like that. So there might be some mechanisms like any other code enforcement where the city has the ability to fine or ask for things to be done. I don't know what that looks like, but I would be interested in, as the counselor said, something to hold them accountable. And in that discretion piece of the make sure that this isn't just a sort of nuisance complaint on the part of the person making the complaint. I did like that the threshold is actual citations and not just complaints. That felt like a good, useful safeguard to me, because you could go out to a property a million times, but there's nothing to cite there. So there can actually be a problem there. And one, so just last, I don't know if this is like actionable in a future draft or what, but what the mayor was just saying about property owners and landlords who are not here in the city, who are not doing their due diligence to their properties, that's the kind of landlord that might not even show up at these hearings. And so there's nothing here about if they don't show up to the hearing. I guess I assume in that case, it would just be that their side is not heard at the hearing?
Right. And that
If you don't show up, then basically one side, you still have the hearing. You're just looking at an empty chair saying, do you have anything to say, ma'am or sir?
Yeah.
And who are you going to rule to?
That's what happened to me. Okay, we'll have another chance. Okay, let's went to court 4 times for one tenant. And on a larger scale, what do? Because I know for a fact you're getting calls from the Tilden House in North Barre Manor that were set up for elderly. And they're not elderly living in there. And I know the owner of Ladder One, the complaints that she has of what's going on. So how are you gonna deal with an actual housing authority when it comes to this?
Right, and some of that goes back to, it's my understanding that, because of the federal stipulations that you had to allow other than elderly individuals in there. And yeah, that
It is a problem.
It is a problem, and that's what we deal with quite frequently when we go to those complaints there. It's not the elderly folks causing the problem.
Well, there's a gentleman in North Barre Manor who doesn't dare leave his apartment only for to get his medication and groceries. And he said that to me.
Councilor Guston?
I just wanted to finish my questions from a moment ago, which is that with understanding that there may be situations where there's an absentee landlord or a landlord who's not doing their due diligence, and I don't know that this needs to be captured in the policy, but just so that we're thinking about it, if we get to the 800 days per incident day of a bad actor landlord has a property that's falling apart and it's clearly not the tenant's fault, do we have the ability to really go after this? Are we prepared to sort of use court proceedings to take that on? That's all.
It'd be expensive.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'll just share, the chief talked to his counterpart in St. Albans, and I think the feedback we got was really positive, which is why we went this route. and this is where I had gotten that they do have Champlain Housing Authority, which I'm not sure if it's an equivalent to Barre Housing, but they did mention they do have that. They have 35 unit complexes there. They said Champlain Housing is not as quick to evict due to the rules, but they have stepped it up, is what we heard. And that other landlords, in their experience, have been making big changes, moving people out who need to be moved out, and their biggest problems have greatly diminished, that their biggest problem properties have reduced in scope and calls. The city has been aggressive with the fines, and the city will also, he mentions, or he or she, the chief there, mentions that the city will also drop them if if the landlord is making progress, right? So this is the sort of the give and take. We talked about that this is not, the purpose of an ordinance like this, the purpose of the ordinance, like the public conduct ordinance, wasn't to get rich by fining or issuing citations, it's to change behaviors, right? So if the landlord is working and making good faith efforts to make progress, the city is recognizing that as well. So anyways, I think they've been at this for almost a year now. They have a year's worth of experience under their belts. They seem to have made some good progress with it. I got some really good feedback today, I think, about adding the tenants to sort of the hearing component if they are identified as the issue, the FD versus PD component of enforcement. How this applies to Barre Housing, I think we'll have to figure out. This ordinance obviously doesn't. We may have to do something different. And then I'm happy to talk with the city attorneys about how to make this applicable to property owners also, in addition to rental properties. So I think those are all great points. And it sounds like St. Albans has dealt with many of them, but we're certainly happy to tweak this to accommodate these comments.
Any other questions, council? Let me just say, and I have spoken at length with some of the board members. I mean, I think as most of you know, I appoint the board members to Barre Housing Authority, and I can recall the board of directors of the Barre Housing Authority. No one at times is more frustrated with the current situation than their staff and the board. In many respects, and I hate this answer when you say, oh, their hands are tied. Absent legislation, their hands are literally tied. They can go through, there was one recent case, Chief, you're familiar with this, where they were hoping that an individual would get charged with a crime because they knew there was suspected drug activity at that residence. Police had been reporting that intel to them, and they were hoping that somebody would get charged, and unfortunately, something went down, but the person didn't get charged. So we're right back to square zero. So, I think including them, it's all in how you include people in the conversation. And if we include them in the conversation respectfully, saying, like we did with the SNAP program this week, we're not being confrontational about our challenges. We're here to partner with you and we want to get this stuff done. So I think as long as that's our approach, and that's what I think our approach is going to be. If you're working with us, we're going to work with you. If you have a problem tenant, heck, we'll do, city council will sign a letter saying, this is a nuisance property because this tenant has been charged 3 times in the last 6 months with dealing drugs. And send it along to the court and say, Your Honor, help him get out. There's things we can do to work with people. And so I think that's what our intention is going to be. I appreciate the two of you bringing this forward. Like the conduct ordinance, like I said, 6 months from now, my question is going to be, Chief, worth it or not? So, all good. Great. Chief, thank you very much. Safe travels. Okay, council, we're at item 8D on the agenda. This is the creation of the Neighborly Barre Committee. Councilor Spalding and Hillgartner, I think we got your briefing last week, so this is just the formal approval that, thank you for putting that back on the agenda. So I spoke with Councilor Hillgartner before the meeting, and my suggestion is, and I think we can do this with advisory committees, that we say no less than 5, no more than 9, and a quorum. So the appropriate motion would be that we create the Neighborly Barre Committee as outlined earlier, with minimum membership of 5, maximum membership of 9, and a quorum would be a majority of the appointed members. So, yes?
So moved.
What's the cost
Is there a
of,
second for discussion?
I think that's
Second, please, for
second
discussion. Thank you. Yeah,
cost.
No cost.
zero.
Cost.
Zero.
Yep.
No cost.
So once it becomes part of this, it goes on every year, or it has to be re-upped? I'm not against it.
No,
believe me, I'm for it. I
it's,
just wanna-
once a committee is
So many-
created until, at times, I think, for example, yeah, we did. We cleaned up our committees
we
not
did.
that long ago.
Yep.
We had a tree committee that was dormant for, holy cow,
Yeah.
a dozen years or more. I mean, there was just no one on it and no one, so as long as a committee, on occasion, we have committees that actually want to function and they might have 1 or 2 members when they need 4 or 5 to create a full committee or to meet a quorum. So, this will be the same as any other committee. And I'm sorry, as part of the motion should be that the council liaison to this particular committee would be Councilor Bill Gardner. Okay, so that we good with the mover and seconder?
Friendly amendment.
If I may, the tree committee, we were actually talking about that I didn't remember that there was a tree committee, but I did remember there was something about trees, people who took care of our trees, and I thought, well, they're not here anymore, and maybe that could become part of this. If someone wanted to adopt a tree, we're gonna adopt a
could.
storm drain, they could adopt a tree, and we could grow those trees on Main Street,
Yeah, and then you got people putting a ladder against a tree and they're falling out and
No, I'm
Nicholas
not
is
talking
getting
about-
a
I'm talking about,
call.
like, fertilizing, watering, like taking
yeah.
care of them that way.
Adopt the bottom 2 feet of the tree.
Yes, that kind of thing.
I mean, they could adopt. Sometimes the trees get a little unsightly. They got a lot of weeds growing around the little.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that this committee could do, and there's nothing wrong with being neighborly. So if there's no other questions, all those in favor of the
have a
motion? Oh, I'm
question.
sorry, sure, go ahead.
When are we going to put out a request for appointments for this to get people?
Yeah, I plan to issue it tomorrow. We'll post it on our website, on social media, and we'll start receiving applications, and as we get them, we'll bring people forward for consideration for the
Okay.
council.
I just wanted to make sure that was what we were doing.
Yep.
I see some names in here, and I know that those were the folk that had kind of decided to step up and kind of be a steering committee.
I'll respond to that. The people who spoke up and said Councilor Spalding and I felt that it was really important that we show that to you guys, that this wasn't just going to be another committee like the tree committee where we couldn't get anybody to serve. So I think all the people who have said they're willing to serve have said they're willing to serve, not that they expect to be appointed. So of course the appointments are open.
Sure.
And that's also, we have.
So we
this-
could, so this is a new committee. The only thing that's a little, I don't want to say weird, I mean, we do the appointments. We generally, just in terms of managing the meetings, we might do 2 a meeting. We usually don't do more than that. If you want to stand, I mean, the names are familiar to me, and it's up to the council, but if you, obviously, we'll wait until people start submitting, but we could actually stand this committee up without the required interviews for the position. It might speed things along. Otherwise, I'm looking at our schedule, and it could take you until January to fully stand this committee up.
So would the mechanism that be, then they would still submit the application, we would review the application, then maybe.
Yeah, just
pass them
stay
on
tuned.
Consent agenda?
Yeah, just stay tuned, I mean, just in the interest of standing it up quickly, because if we do 9, that's 4 meetings, 2 months.
The other thing about if we stand the committee up quickly is that we could add, if there was more interest, we could add the 9
Sure.
further out.
Well, we'll have other,
Yeah.
so, the notice goes out, so we could conceivably get 9 people to apply. The 5 who plan on applying already, and then there could be 4 more. So, I'm just saying, if we've got to interview and appoint 9 people, we usually do 2 a meeting. It's going to take a little while, so just stay tuned. So I may just present that to the council and say, look, here's 6, or here's 7. Can we just waive the formal, interview and just get this committee appointed? And we could even, if you want to come back, we can come back throughout the year if you want to, or we can hear from the people throughout the year. Might just speed things up along. I know Nicholas really loves the whole, interview process, but.
We don't want to take that away from you.
Feel like he'd sacrifice for us.
I'll take one.
Does that sound okay?
That's fine.
Any other questions, folks? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion is presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Council Word Item 9, upcoming business. Councilor Guston, the first meeting we were going to have, I don't know if you gave it some thought. The first
okay, yes.
meeting we were going to do, we wanted to talk about doing one in November
Yes.
with our business community. We're,
November's tight.
Thanksgiving
Yeah.
is late this year. It's the 27th is like way down on
Yes.
the calendar. So Thanksgiving is about as late as it can possibly be. So, obviously we want to do it before then, and we're kind of closing in on the 15th so I don't know, you want to set that up?
Are we
Call
still?
Tracy, we could call Tracy, we could call
Yeah,
John.
and I had actually been talking to a couple of folks as well, just floating the idea past them. So just to clarify, if we're 100% committed to November, are we looking at a regular Tuesday council meeting slot?
No.
Not necessarily.
No, I'd actually rather stay away from that
Okay.
and do it in an off week. That's why because I know it limits our choices. We could always move our council meeting around too. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to figure out a place where we could do it where it would be, pretty well attended, place, time,
I
where it
have-
would be pretty well attended.
I
I
have
just,
some ideas. Let me give Tracy and.
Just, yeah, give me a shout.
I will land something by the end of this week and reach out
Perfect.
to council with the tentative plans, and we can discuss them at a future actual council meeting.
That is awesome. And second round CDBG-DR, are we submitting on 143? Is it your plan?
We would hope to, we still don't have any timeline, schedule from the state.
Oh,
Yeah, we're still,
I thought they said they'd have that out.
yeah, I thought so
By the
too.
10th,
Oh,
right?
okay, I'm not
thought so.
criticizing. They got a lot of applications they're going through. I'm just surprised.
Yeah, and we're still waiting for the invitation to go to the hearing and the board meeting and
Yeah.
to present, so that's on
Kind
the
of
20th.
Makes me happy that we didn't waive off
Yeah.
until the second round.
Yeah.
Which may not, well, whatever. Okay. Council, anything else any of you would want to, so that's what's upcoming in the short term. In the long term, yes.
Are you going to give us an update on SNAP, or is that during round two?
Oh, yeah, I was going to do that after we do this.
Okay, that's what, I was curious about that.
Okay, okay. I'll do, if there's nothing else, I'll do that now. So where we stand today, council, is we managed to raise $18,000 in private when I say private donations, 5,000 of that came, and thank you, Councilor Spalding, came from the Barre Barre Community Relief Program. So that 5,000 was from that program. Folks on that board are myself, Kathy Morse, Jonathan Williams, and Councilor Spalding. I did not participate because I presented it to the relief fund. I didn't think it was appropriate, even though there's obviously no direct financial gain. I didn't think it was appropriate to participate in the vote. So thank you to the remaining board members who voted for that appropriation. So, do the math at $25, that bought quite a few gift cards. So as I said, the remaining 13,000 was private donations. We pushed it hard on social media. That was yesterday. We were at 18,000. I think that money is still coming in. We're using that money to buy $25 gift cards, and we've been handing those out at Capstone and Enough Ministries, Dan Mullen's place. In addition, Dan, because, this is Barre City residents only in terms of the gift cards, Dan was able to secure $5,000 from an organization, and that's being used to folks who live outside of Barre who are coming to Enough Ministries. And then obviously our food shelves, working with Vermont Food Bank, who is the primary, distributor. Enough Ministries and Heading Methodist Church are open 7 days a week. in addition to others. The other food banks, Salvation Army, there's many, many others. I think you all got a copy of our flyer. So there's many others. Those are operating their normal hours, but we wanted to make sure that there's literally 7-day-a-week coverage. And our period of concern was through this Friday. On this Friday, the 50% allocation that was voted by the E-Board will hit the cards of all SNAP recipients. So I hesitate to say, oh, it's been, what we're hearing is that we're not seeing any panic, that people are able to visit the food shelf. We are, Dan is rationing protein, meat packages. It used to be if he had 5 meat packages and you needed it, you could take 5. He's limiting that. Dan has been a rock star, but we're meeting the need. People, no one is panicking, no one is going without. When people visit the food shelf, whether they're from Barre City or area, when they visit the food shelf, they're being served. There are no wait times, there's no panic. So as I started to say earlier, when I know every day that some people are hungry, you always hesitate to call it a success. But I'm very, very proud of the work that, and most importantly, we talk every day. Every day I get a briefing, we have an email chain, and I shoot that briefing out, and I just say, you're all busy, 1 or 2 words, what do you need? What's going right? What's not going right? How are you feeling? And I get a short, paragraph-long message back from everyone, and consistently it's been, yes, there's a heightened need, but we don't have wait times, we don't have anyone panicking, and we're able to serve everyone who walks into the food shelf. So very proud of our team here. We are the only municipality in Vermont who reacted this quickly and this strongly. And looks like for today, we're getting it done. So we feel good about that. And just to speak about the program, the overall SNAP program, broad impacts of the program. So, as you all know, courts ruled against the U.S. government, against the USDA. They said you must fund the SNAP program. They didn't necessarily specify to what limit. So what the USDA has come back with is they've said, well, we have enough contingency funds to fund the program to a 50% level. So if we think about how we're doing in Vermont during the month of November, thank you to the people who have donated to the food banks and stepped up with the cash donations, but looking at it really simply, 50% is coming from the state government. That will hit the EBT cards on Friday. 50% will come from the USDA, and we honestly don't know when the USDA has said there's going to be a delay because it's a reduced benefit. Horse hockey.
Yeah, right.
I mean, quite frankly, it took the state of Vermont about a week. This is a federal program, so it took the state programmers about a week to figure out how to get the EBT cards programmed, and that's understandable. It's not an uncomplex, it's a very secure mechanism. I'm not buying the USDA's answer. I'm hopeful that they come to their senses, that they develop a little compassion, and I'm hopeful that it takes the USDA no more than 1 week. If all of that falls into place, then folks in Vermont, when I say fine, folks in Vermont will receive their normal benefit for the month of November. So this is a situation, and I don't put it outside the realm of possibilities that the states will sue the USDA saying, you have even more contingency funds, but you say they've expired, we don't agree with you. So this thing is far from over. I mean, literally every day something is happening, but in Barre City, Vermont, great things are happening because people are just stepping up and getting the job done. So that's, yes, Bern Rose?
Hi, thank you. I just want to say thank you. This has really been wonderful to see how people in Barre came together. I have SNAP benefits, and I just wanted to let you know that this afternoon I received a phone call and a text from Public Services, giving everybody who they're able to contact the information about the 7th being the time for them to look at their benefit card, the number to call to find out what's on their card, which is also on the card. And it gave also websites. So the state has just done an amazing job reaching out to inform everybody about what is going on. And I didn't know if anybody else on council would have seen or heard about that. So I wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so council, we do, after roundtable, we are going to need an executive session. Who do we start with? We'll pick on Council Ruth here this week. You want to start roundtable?
Just very happy that my Vikings won this weekend.
Council Spalding.
I got to work at the BCA table yesterday. It was my first time and at the election, and wow, it was really, I worked with Councilor Hillgartner. It was a lot of fun. Councilor Hillgartner actually commented, you know a lot of people, but it was funny how many people I've never seen before in my whole life, and they live here. And I just am astounded, and it was really great, and I just was pleased to be a part of it, so. And it was so easy and well-run, and thank you to our clerk.
Were you surprised with the turnout?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I was really surprised,
I was too.
considering what we were voting on. I was really surprised there were that many people. Yeah, it was great.
Councilor Deering.
Got to hang out with the Coyotes this weekend on Sunday night. That was a nice basketball game. They won. They were rebounding after a loss on Saturday night, which I was not able to attend. I was at the Northern Vermont Youth Football League Championships, in which Barre did not win. But I was fortunate enough to have the capabilities to broadcast that for them. So I went out of my way and just broadcast both the D1 and the D2 games. So you can check that out on cvtsport.net. It's on YouTube as well. It's all free. It's all the stuff that we broadcast for all our local sports. So we just try to bring that to the kiddos. Fortunately, they did not win, but they made it to the title game. So that's a huge accomplishment in itself. So we got a lot of really great things going on here in Barre.
Councilor.
I was going to say the thing about BCA and doing my civic duty and how interesting and fun it was. And it was really neat to, the BCA table deals with the people who run into problems. And it was just so nice to be able to register people and give them their ballots and let them experience the joy of participating in their civic responsibility and honor of voting.
Thank you. Councilor Guston.
It feels like it's been a really, really good week in Barre City. It feels like, I'm thinking back to the Halloween skating in costumes that we were able to pull off because the ice got in early, the way the community has come together to help our most vulnerable members who are, so that they do not go hungry, so that we're taking care of each other. That has felt really phenomenally good. And our new DPW garage and new housing in downtown, it's felt like we've been able to put together really good things in our community, so.
Awesome. And we're just getting started.
We are,
So
that's the best part.
hold on to your hats. You get these little things that pop up on Facebook like your memories. So no, one popped up and interestingly, it had the same signs that I was putting up. I recycled the signs. They were in my loft in my barn. If Brian Doobie ever decides to run for governor again, I got him covered. Literally, I have a barn loft full of all political, I was cleaning the loft. It's fall, so I was, putting stuff away, and I was putting stuff in the loft, and so I start flipping from them, and I come through this whole box of, vote yes, vote today, yes, move Barre forward. And so I put them up, and I took them down. I didn't leave them hanging around. And thank you, voters. Thank you for the vote of confidence. Thank you for your faith in us. We're going to work really hard to continue to earn your trust and to keep your trust. But up on Facebook pops that same damn sign. And from 12 years ago, and it was 12 years ago when I was mayor, and we passed the original TIF district. So, so that just felt kind of cool. Ditto with the Coyotes. Folks, it's real basketball. I mean, it's high level, Division I basketball. And lastly, thank you to the Bovair family. 75 years is a long, long time to serve your community, and between Ernie and Carl and their entire family, and Carl's daughter, they really did serve Barre for 75 years. You'd walk in there, I guess I'll have to stop wearing my cowboy boots because Carl would always put the heels, on the boots and sew them up and make them new again. So Karen will be happy. But you'd go in there and you bought a lot more than a service. You bought kindness. They were always so patient. And you really, you always came out of there with a smile on your face, having talked to Ernie or Carl or their daughter or Carl's wife. It was just wonderful. And so we will be doing something, council. I don't know what yet. Maybe it'll be a big granite boot. I don't know. But we have to do something. 75 years is a long time to serve a community and to serve a community so well. So to the Bovair family, who's unfortunate going out of business, sales starts today, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And with that, council, I'll need a motion for findings, please, and a motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate. Findings?
For findings.
Thank you. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, and a motion to go into executive session. The manager will be joining us.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
So when we're on recording.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Spaulding, for your motion to exit executive session. Thank you, Councilor Ruthier, for your second. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Moved.
Thank you, Councilor Guston. Thank you for your second, Councilor Hidgartner. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, council adjourned at 8:37.
I have a question for you.
here all night dredging
When we're sitting